Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at something super interesting, how vital communication happens during emergencies. Like when every second counts and the phone lines are totally jammed with people trying to reach their loved ones.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge that I think most people don't really consider until they're actually right in the middle of it. When disaster strikes, that ability to make a simple phone call, it can really be the difference between, safety and danger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So how do first responders, government leaders, and other essential people cut through that communication chaos?
Right.
Well, that's where GetTS comes in. The Government Emergency Telecommunications Service. I have to admit, I was pretty clueless about this whole system before we started prepping for this deep dive.
Yeah, get to this. It's one of those things that it kind of works quietly in the background, but it has this enormous impact. It's essentially a program. It's managed by the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA,
Okay.
and it provides priority access to telephone networks
Gotcha.
when they're overloaded during emergencies.
Okay, so let's break this down. Let's say a massive earthquake hits a city. Phone lines are completely swamped. How does GetTS actually ensure that those crucial calls get through?
Okay, so imagine it like this. You've got a highway that's completely clogged with traffic, but emergency vehicles, right, they need to get through quickly. So Get TS is essentially creating like a dedicated lane for those emergency vehicles, allowing them to bypass all that congestion.
So it's not about like cutting off regular calls or interrupting conversations.
Right.
It's more about strategically using the network to prioritize those like really time-sensitive communications.
Exactly. And to access that priority lane, GetT's users, they have a special dialing sequence.
Oh.
They dial a specific access number, they enter their unique PIN, and then they dial the number that they're trying to reach.
Okay.
The system then recognizes those GetT's calls, and it gives them priority over that non-Gets traffic.
That's pretty ingenious, and it makes me wonder, who are these GetT's users? I mean,
Right.
who gets access to this special communication system?
Well, it's designed for a wide range of individuals and organizations that are crucial to national security, public safety, and emergency response.
Okay.
So, think government leaders who are making critical decisions, first responders coordinating rescue efforts, utility managers, working to restore power outages, even private sector leaders ensuring that, things like banking and transportation stay operational.
Wow. So it's really a lifeline for so many different people in a crisis.
Mhm.
It's fascinating to see how interconnected it all is.
It is. It really highlights the complexity of, emergency response.
Yeah.
You've got all these different players, all relying on, clear, reliable communication to coordinate their efforts and make sure that the public is safe and sound.
Okay, so we've established that GetThese plays a crucial role in emergency response, but I'm curious, what makes it so reliable? Like, what are the technical features that set it apart from regular phone systems?
Well, one key feature is its wide compatibility. Get Teats, it works across multiple carriers and networks, so it's not tied to any one specific provider. So that means that even if, let's say, one network goes down, Get Key S calls can be rerouted through another network to ensure that you have continuous communication.
So it's like having a backup generator for communication.
Exactly.
No matter what happens, there's a way to keep those vital lines open.
Exactly. And that redundancy is absolutely crucial in emergency situations, right? Where you absolutely cannot afford to lose communication.
Right.
GetTS also has nationwide coverage throughout the United States, and it even extends to some international regions.
Oh.
So this ensures that no matter where an emergency occurs, authorized users can connect with each other.
So it's truly a national safety net. It makes you realize how much thought and planning goes into preparing for those like what-if scenarios that we all hope will never happen, but, we need to be ready for.
Absolutely. It really speaks to the commitment to maintaining communication, even in those really challenging circumstances.
So we've gotten a good overview of what GETS is and why it's so important. But let's say someone listening is thinking, hey, my organization might need this. What's the process for actually getting on board with GetTS?
Okay, so the first step is to contact your organization's telecommunications service manager.
Okay.
They're typically the ones who handle GetTS registration. You'll need to submit an application through your organization, just outlining why you need GETS access and how you'll be using it.
Gotcha. So it's not just like a free-for-all.
Right.
There's a vetting process to make sure the system is being used appropriately. And for those like critical situations it's designed for.
Exactly. Once the application is approved, you'll receive a GetTS card with your own unique PIN and instructions on how to use the service.
Okay. Sounds pretty straightforward. So far, we've mostly focused on voice calls. But can GetTees handle other forms of communication as well?
Oh, that's a great question. While Git is primarily known for voice communication, it's actually quite versatile. It can also facilitate, data and fax transmissions in emergencies, which can be very crucial for sharing, critical information, maps, other
So it's
documents.
like the Swiss Army knife of emergency communication.
Right.
It's got you covered no matter what. Okay, before we move on, could you quickly recap those key features that make Git so reliable, just to really drive those points home for our listeners?
Of course. To sum it up, GitS offers priority access over non-GITS traffic. It works across multiple carriers and networks, and it provides nationwide coverage.
Mm.
So these features, they all work together to create this communication system that's incredibly resilient and able to withstand even, the most challenging circumstances.
It really paints a picture of how much ingenuity goes into building these systems that most people never even think about. I'm especially interested in that redundancy feature. Can you share an example of a situation where this, backup system proved to be essential?
Absolutely. One instance that immediately comes to mind is Hurricane Katrina back in 2005.
Right.
The storm caused widespread devastation along the Gulf Coast, knocking out communication networks across the region.
It was a truly devastating event, and communication was absolutely critical during those response and recovery efforts.
Exactly. And that's where Getz really stepped in. Even though, many regular phone lines were down, GetS was able to use its multi-carrier capabilities to route calls through functioning networks,
Wow.
ensuring that, emergency responders, government officials, and relief organizations could stay connected.
That's incredible. It really highlights how vital a system like this can be in, a large-scale disaster.
Yeah, it really underscores how even in the face of, widespread disruption, maintaining those lines of communication can be a lifeline for coordinating those rescue efforts, delivering aid, and ultimately saving lives.
It really puts into perspective the importance of a system like GetTest. It's like having a safety net for communication when everything else falls apart.
It is, and it's a reminder that even in, our hyper-connected world where we often kind of just take communication for granted, there are systems working behind the scenes to make sure we can stay connected when it matters most.
That's a powerful thought. It makes you realize how reliant we are on communication and how fragile those systems can be when faced with a major crisis.
It does. And it's why systems like GETS are so crucial. They provide a layer of resilience, ensuring that even when we're faced with, the unexpected, we have a way to stay connected and coordinate a response.
So while we may not think about GETS every day, it's reassuring to know that it's there, ready to step in when we need it most. And that peace of mind is, I think, invaluable.
Absolutely. It allows us to focus on what's truly important during an emergency, responding effectively and ensuring the safety of, ourselves and our communities.
Well, I think we've done a great job of unpacking the basics of GETS and why it's so important, but there's still so much more to explore. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll delve into real-world examples of how GETS has been used in, various emergencies and the impact it's had on those situations. We'll also take a look at the future of GETS and how it's adapting to that changing landscape of communication technology.
Yeah, looking forward to it. There's some really fascinating stories to share about how GETS has made a difference in some very critical moments.
Great. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back after a short break to continue our deep dive into the world of GETS. Welcome back. We're continuing our exploration of GETS, and you know how it helps keep communication flowing during emergencies. Before the break, you mentioned some fascinating real-world stories.
Yeah.
I'm really eager to hear how GETS has actually made a difference, out there in the field.
Oh, there's so many examples.
Yeah.
But one that really highlights GETS' impact, I think, is the response to the 2017 California wildfires. These fires were some of the most destructive in the state's history, and communication was absolutely essential, for coordinating firefighting efforts and evacuations.
Yeah, I remember those fires so vividly. The images were just devastating.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine the chaos and the urgent need for clear communication in that kind of situation.
Absolutely. And with cell towers down and phone lines overwhelmed, GetDesk provided this crucial link for first responders.
Wow.
Firefighters were able to use GETS to coordinate their attacks on the blaze, call for backup, and even direct residents to safety.
So in that situation, GetS wasn't just about convenience.
Right.
It was about saving lives.
Exactly.
It really underscores how vital a system like this can be when, traditional communication methods fail.
Precisely. And it's not just natural disasters where GETS proves its worth. Think about the Boston Marathon bombing back in 2013.
Yeah.
In the aftermath of the explosions, first responders were dealing with this massive influx of calls,
Right.
making it extremely difficult to coordinate their response.
It's hard to even fathom the stress and confusion of that moment.
I can only imagine how overwhelmed, the communication systems must have been.
They were, but Getz was able to cut through that noise, allowing, law enforcement and medical personnel to communicate effectively direct resources to where they were needed most,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately, help save lives and bring the situation under control.
Those stories are really inspiring. It's incredible to see how GETS has been used in such a wide range of emergencies, from natural disasters to, acts of terrorism.
Yeah, it speaks to the foresight of those people who designed and implemented this system. They recognized the critical need for a reliable backup communication method,
Yeah.
and Getz has really proven its value time and time again.
It makes you wonder, though, with all the advancements in technology, is a system like GETS that's primarily voice-based?
Right.
Is it still relevant in today's world? I mean, we live in an age of instant messaging, video calls, and constant data flow. That's a great question. And, while it is true that the communication landscape is evolving very rapidly, the need for reliable voice communication during emergencies isn't going away anytime soon.
Right.
In fact, in many disaster scenarios, voice calls often are, the most dependable way to communicate.
Why is that? I would have thought that database communication would be more efficient, especially for sharing, things like maps or real-time updates.
Well, while data certainly has its place, voice calls often have an edge in emergencies.
Okay.
They're less susceptible to network outages, they require less bandwidth,
Right.
and they often work even when data networks are down or overloaded.
Right.
Plus, there's something about, the directness and the immediacy of a voice call
Yeah.
that can be crucial in those high-pressure situations.
Yeah. It makes sense when you need to convey urgency or get a quick answer. There's nothing quite like a voice call.
Exactly. And while ADAS does focus primarily on voice,
Okay.
it's important to remember that it can also support data and fax transmissions. So it offers a level of flexibility that's really essential in, those rapidly evolving situations.
So it's not about clinging to outdated technology.
Right.
It's about recognizing the strengths of those different communication methods and using the right tool for the job.
Precisely. And that brings up a really interesting point about the future of GETS.
Yeah.
While voice communication, remains at its core strength,
Oh.
GetTS is constantly evolving to integrate with new technologies
Okay.
and adapt to the changing needs of emergency responders.
So it's not just a static system that's stuck in the past.
No.
It's actually keeping pace with the times.
Absolutely. There's a lot of work being done to enhance GET's capabilities,
Okay.
including, exploring ways to incorporate data, video, and even location-based services into the system.
That's exciting. It sounds like Getz is well positioned to remain like a vital tool in the future of emergency communication.
I believe it is, and it highlights how a system that might appear relatively simple on the surface actually plays this surprisingly complex and interconnected role in ensuring our safety and security.
It's like the nervous system of emergency response, connecting all the different parts and ensuring they can communicate effectively to respond to whatever challenges come up.
That's a great analogy, and, just like our own nervous system, GETS needs to be constantly evolving and adapting to keep up with the demands of our ever-changing world.
This has been so eye-opening. I had no idea. GetTS was so sophisticated and multifaceted. It makes you appreciate the ingenuity and dedication of the people who work, behind the scenes to keep these systems running.
It does, and it's a reminder that even in our hyper-connected world, where we often take communication for granted, there are people and systems working tirelessly to ensure we can stay connected when it matters most.
Yeah, it's a comforting thought. It gives you a sense of security knowing that even if chaos erupts, there's a system in place to help coordinate a response and keep those vital lines of communication open.
It's like having a safety net for communication when everything else falls apart, and it allows us to focus on, what's truly important during an emergency, responding effectively, and ensuring the safety of ourselves and our communities.
Speaking of focusing on what's important, are there any aspects of GETS that we haven't touched on yet that you think our listeners should know about?
One thing we haven't really mentioned is the importance of training and preparedness when it comes to gets.
Okay.
It's not enough to simply have access to the system.
Yeah.
Users need to be properly trained on how to use it effectively in like a high stress situation.
That makes sense. It's like having a fire extinguisher but not knowing how to use it when a fire breaks out.
Exactly. CISA offers, various training programs and resources to help gets users familiarize themselves with the system,
Uh-huh.
practice, the dialing procedures, and learn how to troubleshoot any issues that might arise.
So it's not just about the technology itself. It's about making sure that the people who rely on it are prepared and confident in their ability to use it when it matters most.
Absolutely. The human element is just as important as the technology.
I agree. This deep dive has been so insightful. I feel like I've gained like this whole new understanding of how emergency communication works and the critical role that gets plays in, keeping us safe and connected during those critical moments.
It's been my pleasure sharing this information with you and the listeners.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's given everyone a greater appreciation for, the complexity and importance of these systems that often operate behind the scenes.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you think our listeners should consider or explore further if they want to learn more about GETS?
Absolutely. If you're interested in diving deeper, I highly recommend visiting the CISA website, CISA.gov gets.
Okay.
You'll find a wealth of information there, including details on, eligibility requirements, registration procedures, and even technical specifications for those, curious minds out there.
Great advice. It sounds like a treasure trove of information for anyone who wants to delve deeper into this fascinating world of emergency communication.
It is. And for those, who are involved in emergency response or critical infrastructure,
Right.
it's a really invaluable resource for understanding how GETS can help them stay connected and coordinate their efforts during a crisis.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored the history of GETS, its technical capabilities, its impact in real-world emergencies, and even its future in, this ever-evolving technological landscape.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Yeah.
And hopefully our listeners have come away with, a new appreciation for this often overlooked, but, absolutely vital system.
I know, I have. It's given me a whole new perspective on the importance of communication and the ingenuity of the people who work to keep us connected when it matters most.
And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. GETS is about ensuring that when the unexpected happens,
Right.
we have the tools and the knowledge to communicate effectively, coordinate a response, and ultimately, keep each other safe.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the face of adversity, we have the ability to connect, to collaborate, and to overcome challenges together.
Well, I think we've done a fantastic job of unpacking GETS today, and I want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights with our listeners.
The pleasure is all mine. I'm always happy to, shed light on this important topic.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of GETS. We hope you found it informative and engaging. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay connected. It's really amazing to think about all the work that goes into making sure we can stay connected even when it feels like everything else is falling apart. It really is. And that's the key takeaway here, right? Even if you're not, directly involved in emergency response work, just knowing about GetPS kind of helps you understand that complex web of people and the technology that's working tirelessly behind the scenes to keep those vital communication links up and running, when it matters most.
Yeah, it's like having a secret weapon against chaos,
Yeah.
a way to make sure that even in the, darkest of times, there's still a way to communicate and get help.
Exactly. And knowing about the system can give you a sense of reassurance, too.
Right.
If a major emergency were to strike you now, understand that there's a dedicated system in place to help coordinate response efforts and, keep those essential services running.
Yeah, it's like having that feeling, that someone has your back, even when things are at their worst.
Well, I think we've done a pretty thorough job of unpacking GTS today. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners who, may want to learn more about this fascinating system? I'd say if you're interested in diving deeper, I highly recommend visiting the CISA website. It's CISA.gov gets. You'll find a ton of information there, including details on eligibility requirements and registration procedures, and even technical specifications for those, folks who are a little more technically inclined.
Perfect. Great advice.
Aye.
It sounds like a treasure trove of information for anyone who wants to delve deeper into this world of emergency communication.
It really is.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the Government Emergency Telecommunications Service. Remember, knowledge is power. And understanding, these behind-the-scenes systems gives us all a better appreciation for all the incredible work that goes into keeping us safe and connected.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this journey today. We hope you found it, informative and insightful.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay connected.